Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Open Research Office. My name is Michelle Brooks, and I'm one of the clinical research facilitators with the CRO, along with my colleague whose picture is above me, Alexis O'Brien. As a reminder, today's session is obviously being recorded, and it'll be posted to our webpage once closed captions have been added at a later date. Today's session is titled REDCap 101 and is going to contain a brief introduction to REDCap. We're also holding a second session on REDCap that'll be titled Your First REDCap Project, which will go a little bit more into depth about the forms and the way you can input things into REDCap on January 18th. If you're interested in attending that session, the registration link is already up on our webpage. And today's REDCap presenter and the next sessions is Naveed Shah. He's the CTSI IT business analyst. There is going to be a question and answer session at the end of his presentation, and I'm going to ask that you wait until then to ask any of your questions. In case you're concerned with forgetting your question, you can go ahead and type it in the chat, and then I'll relay it to Naveed at the end of our session. And with that, Naveed, you can go ahead and get started.
Thank you, Marshall, for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. So my name, as Marshall mentioned, is Naveed Shah. I am the IT business analyst here at the CTSI. Today, I wanted to do an introduction to REDCap. What are the origins of REDCap, where it came from, why it was created, and why people around the world today utilize it for current day research, including us here at the CTSI and many other departments actually with the University of Buffalo. Also, there's going to be a brief tour of the interface in order to become familiar with the layout, which will help us in the next session in January to build out our first project. I'm sure there's people here who have never used REDCap before, or maybe don't know what REDCap is. And there are also people here who probably use REDCap on a weekly basis. I'm hoping that for everyone here, you can walk out of this session with some new information, some new knowledge. For those who use REDCap already, hopefully there's some fact about REDCap you didn't know before that you learned today. And for those who have never utilized REDCap, I really want this session to make you comfortable and confident to use REDCap for our January session, because in January, I want us to roll up our sleeves and together as a group, build out our first REDCap project. And we're going to publish it and it's going to go live. And then you can send that link to maybe your colleagues and show off that, hey, I learned REDCap, right? So I want today's session to be really give you a good, comprehensive understanding of what this software is and to, allow you to appreciate it a little bit more and for you to feel not intimidated by the interface and to feel confident to build out your own project. Now, REDCap, it's an internationally utilized secure web application, and it's used for building and maintaining, managing online surveys and databases. It is utilized in 151 countries around the world by 2.3 million people, right? That's a lot, belonging to 6,258 institutions, including us at the University of Buffalo. Right, so this is an internationally utilized software, right? There is something special about it that makes so many institutions and so many researchers around the world stick to using REDCap, right? In fact, here at UB, we actually have a dedicated support team for REDCap that can assist you and help you with any REDCap related issues that you face when you use the software. Now, REDCap is also a tool that here, at the CTSI, we do use pretty heavily. Our various cores use it for various use cases. This includes creating, managing, analyzing surveys for all different types of business scenarios, whether that's feedback, whether it's for research, whether it's for to view the results, of our impact, whatever it might be. Throughout the year, we're using REDCap for different, use scenarios. And different departments within UB also use REDCap, again, for very different use scenarios. So it's a very comprehensive tool and a very nice tool to know how to use and to have at your disposal. So REDCap, we go back to 2004 at Vanderbilt University, which I believe is in Tennessee. They wanted to create something to support clinical researchers who needed some type of secure data tool. Now, you can argue that there's many data tools out there. You have, like, for example, Google Forms. Why not use something that's made by a tech giant, right, who is at the forefront of creating the latest cutting edge technology. Why not use something from them who probably have, amazing security protocols and things of that nature? Well, because as a researcher, and for those of you who are researchers here, you know this very well, that you handle data that can potentially have identifiers, very sensitive data, right? Data that cannot be leaked out, data that cannot fall into the wrong hands, data that cannot fall into unauthorized users, right? And if it does, we all know there could be very severe repercussions, right? So we need a data tool that can meet HIPAA compliance standards, right? It has to be in compliance with HIPAA. And this is what made REDCap really stand out. The developers of REDCap, the software engineers who wrote the code, they had a firm belief that no one can know and understand research as well as researchers. Seems like a very simple fact of life, right? But they perhaps they had researchers along the way throughout the development that really helped them walk through what researchers need. So REDCap is developed in a way that really caters to your needs, right? And you're going to see later on when we do the brief tour of the interface, there are areas where REDCap really, takes away a lot of worry, a lot of concern, takes away a lot of, I guess maybe potential issues that you would face as a researcher. And you can tell the REDCap really was made for you. It really was not, it's not a generic tool to get data. It really is made for researchers at universities and non-for-profit organizations. Now, fast forward 2 years, in 2006, the REDCap consortium was created and it was launched, which basically allowed outside organizations, outside of Vanderbilt University, they can get access to the code base of REDCap. So this allowed them to install REDCap on their own systems, allow them to customize the code of REDCap for their own personal research, their own organizational, business case scenarios, whatever it might be. So REDCap became, you can say, a bit of an open source project in 2006. Then the consortium built a strong community with international participation. And as we mentioned today, there's 151 countries who use it. And then fast forward another 3 years, in 2009, they established an annual in-person conference. Now, one of the organizations that was really interested in this, and they got the code base from REDCap, and they built upon the code base, is our very own university at Buffalo. So REDCap here at UB, right? You can access it by going to redcap.buffalo.edu, and you're met with this login screen that you see here on the slide. And you basically would have to reach out to REDCap administrator and get make sure your UB IT email has access to REDCap. So once you have access to REDCap, you would come here and you would put in your username and your password and log into the page. Again, it seems very bare bone, seems very simple and straightforward, to the point. But then again, researchers love things that are to the point, right? At the end of the day, it's to help you in your research. It's not for the sake of, looking completely, looking all flashy or anything, right? It's very straightforward, very easy to use once you understand it. Now, I actually have to crop out the screenshot. So on the bottom of the page, right, you also get this neat UB kind of tells you what you can do with REDCap, with the UB version of REDCap. So the features that you have, also a little welcome message. You can view a summary video, 4-minute video that just kind of summarizes what REDCap is, right? There's training resources, and of course there is a contact email in case you need help or you need further information. Now, let's say you sign up for REDCap and you get approved for it, and then you sign into REDCap. This is the homepage, right? This is where you can view your projects. You can create a new project. There are training videos available for you. There's also a FAQ page available for you. There's a built-in messenger as well that you can utilize if you want. I think here at the CTSI, we just use Outlook. We don't really utilize it, but it's there if you need it. You do have, some warnings about IRB approval. Again, like I said, this is made for researchers. So you're going to see, a lot of these messages, and just to make sure that, you're in compliance, right? Now, I had to actually crop out this picture because down here would be your projects listed for you. Now, for security purposes, I can't show that to you. So I have to crop it out. But basically, you can imagine, your projects are listed one by one here. and you can access your project, you can edit it, do whatever you like to do, or you can create a new project. Now let's imagine we hit this button and we create a new project, right? So what I did here is, for the sake of today's demo, I created a test project, right? To basically get us familiar with the interface and go through it, certain aspects of it. Now, as you see, it's called test, right? That's the name of the project. And what I want to do for the remainder of the session is go over a few areas of the interface that there is a lot more to REDCap, right? But what I want to focus on is what I think you should know for our next session to build out our first project. So we're going to go over the project homepage, project setup page, the online designer, the data exports section, the survey distribution tool, and the add or edit records tool. And to do that, I'm going to pull up that exact page that you saw, but live. So here we are. Now, at first sight, especially if you land on this page, it looks really intimidating. It looks really complicated, right? But do not be intimidated. The tool is actually very easy, very straightforward once you overcome the initial learning curve. So this is our project that we created, right? Called test. The project homepage will give you some stats about the project, the current users. Now here you can see what users are authorized to view the project, right? For now, it's just me because I just made it for today's demo. But here you can go in and add or subtract users. If you want to add a colleague, if you want to take out someone from the team, this is where you would come. So it's just kind of a brief overview of your project, right? Then you have the project setup. Now, you're going to see these green check marks and this complete in the green, all this green everywhere. That's because for today's demo, I built it out and it's already in production, as you can see. But when you build the project, when we do this in January, this is going to be all red. And we're going to go over how to, kind of approve everything and make sure that the project can be submitted. So this is where you would basically enable or disable surveys or forums on your project. You can modify the title of your project, the purpose. So here, my title is test. REDCap does ask you, by the way, what the purpose of your project is. And for today, I just said, oh, this is just for fun, just practice, right? And some additional notes. This is for today's demo, right? It's pretty straightforward. My project was approved literally within just a few hours, right? Because they realized this is just for demonstration purposes, right? But obviously, if you have more specific use scenario, it may take longer for your project to be approved, again, for sake of HIPAA compliance standards, right? Next, you have the online designer down here, right? This is where you would go to design your actual survey or form. Now, there's two different ways to get here. There's the online designer right here. And then right over here, there's just the designer, right? It leads to the same thing, basically. So let's go over here. Here, you would see your forms. The form, in other words, is basically what your users see. When you send out the survey, this is what your users see, and they fill out for you, right? So I already actually went ahead and created some fields, but I'd like to show them to you. So let's click on form 1. Now, anyone who has done Google Forms, or maybe you did even basic web development, right? I'm sure you're familiar with the concept of forms and the concept of fields and all of that. But even if you're not, that's completely okay. So here in my form, I'm asking for the first name, the last name, the city the person is from, which department they belong to, what's their favorite football team, and I asked them, what is the best city in New York State, right? Now, for demonstration purposes, let's add some more fields. So you would click Add Field. REDCap gives you a bunch of options, right? You have a short text box. If you want a large note box, there's multiple choice, there's check boxes, you have true or false. If you want the user's signature, you can get that. If you want the user to upload something to your survey, they can do that as well. So a couple of options. Let's start with text box. Okay. Now, field label. This is what the user sees. This is the question that the user will see on their end, right? Variable name. When you go and export your results, this is what basically connects the user's answer to the question, right? So can anyone think of a question let's make this a little bit interactive. Can anyone think of a nice, funny question we can ask? You can type in the chat. Favorite color. Okay, so let's say, what is your favorite color? Right? And then to make the results kind of easy for us to understand later on, let's call this color, right? Simple enough. Then REDCap offers you validations. Validations are basically, if you're asking for something, REDCap will make sure the user gives you what you're asking for. So whether that's a date time, if you're asking for an email, REDCap will make sure the user doesn't just put like ABC at something, right? It's a real email. If you're asking for a number, if you're asking for a phone number, right? Whatever, if you're asking for a time, whatever it might be, REDCap does this for you. It gives you that option to make sure that you're getting what you asked from the user. Next, you have the required field. This is standard in any form. Basically, you're telling REDCap, I either need the user to fill this out, or it's optional for the user. Next, and this is one of those things that makes REDCap stand out, is REDCap, they ask you if this is an identifier, right? And for example, they give some examples here. Is this a name? Is this a social security number? Is this an address? Is this any type of information that would be an identifier? And if you click yes, when you submit your project, there are actual human beings behind the computer that go through your project question by question. And if they find anything that can be an identifier, even if I say no, right? But they read the question and they think it's an identifier, they will flag it and they will email you asking for more clarification, right? So you have real human beings sitting behind the screen asking you, going through your questions and making sure that you're in compliance, right? If this is going to require IRB approval, then you need IRB approval, right? And this again is for the sake of our own safety. And this is one of those features that even unintentionally you can kind of overlook, and it can lead to a lot of trouble down the line. But Google Forms, for example, won't do this for you, right? There's no dedicated human beings kind of going through your survey, making sure that you don't get yourself into any trouble. So I don't think I can really identify you if I know your favorite color. So I'll say no to that. Then you just save it, and it comes down here. And now we added that question to our survey. Let's add one more. I want to demonstrate the multiple choice. So for multiple choice, again, you put in the question, right? And then you can put in the choices. So does anyone have a suggestion for a multiple choice question we can ask? Favorite dog breed. Okay. What is your favorite dog breed? So for the person who suggested it, give me some choices. What are some choices you want to give to your users? You can type it out, say it, up to you. Okay. German Shepherd. Give one more option. A, B, C, and D. Okay. Okay, so I put in the options. Now, as soon as I click outside the box, REDCap goes in and it formats the answers for me. So I don't have to worry about formatting. Like literally, if you have, let's say you have an Excel sheet with like a bunch of answers, you can literally just copy and paste it here, and REDCap will do this formatting for you. So the format is obviously like the number, and then a comma, space, and then the answer that you want to give, right? So REDCap does that for you. Pretty neat, pretty nice, right? Variable name, let's call it favorite dog. I think that's pretty clear, pretty straightforward, right? I want to require this from the users, but I don't think that I can identify you like in a huge crowd if I know your favorite dog breed. So I'm going to say no, it's not an identifier. And then save. And as simple as that. we just added 2 questions to our survey, right? Now, obviously in January, we're gonna go more into details, maybe add more types of questions, more nuances, but that's just to show you the simplicity of REDCap. It's so simple, straightforward. Don't be intimidated by maybe the outdated interface, right? It's made for you and it's made to be very simple and easy to use. So next, I want to go over the data exports. This is where you would come to gain basically the results of your survey, right? REDCap gives you a couple of options. Let's view the report of our survey. This is all dummy data that I filled in myself before the session. So I asked, the first name, last name, city, department, right? So this is where you would come, and REDCap would give you the timestamp when someone filled out your questionnaire, your survey, and then the results, right? And what you could do is you could actually print this. You could export it. So you know what? Let's export it. Let's export to CSV with the labels. Export data. Then we can download it. Then it downloads. Let's open it up. And there you go. There is our survey and the results. Now, you'll notice that the questions we just made, right, they're not there because we just made them, right? And then we need to basically republish the survey and have, further people fill it out. And then you'll see the results come in. So very simple, very straightforward. It does the formatting for you. Anyone who has any experience with formatting data on Excel, it's very difficult, very tedious. REDCap does all the hard work for you, which is very neat, and it saves a lot of time and a lot of frustration. So another feature they give you is statistics and charts. This gives you kind of a charts. It lets you view the data more visually. Now, in my case, this is just a test project, right? And all the questions were required. So you're going to see just like, the total amount of people that filled it out, get dummy data, and 0% everywhere because every question was required. So you're not going to see much here, but when you have a real project and you have nuances and you have this information really does mean something to you, this comes really, really in handy, right? You don't have to sit there and do the math yourself on a calculator or on paper. It does all of the hard work for you. And then down here, it actually gives you a visual, a bar chart. You can also make it a pie chart. For my scenario, it's going to be 100% because, again, this is dummy data, very simple. As you saw, it's a very simple, straightforward survey. You could download the chart as well. Let's download it. And then it comes up and then you have it in PNG format for your own discretion and your own use. So again, very neat features, very useful. It saves you a lot of time, especially as a researcher, or if you're giving this to the IT, the programmer or the business analyst of your department, it really saves them a lot of time and a lot of frustration, and it prevents human error, which can something that's obviously very concerning. Next is the survey distribution tool. Now, this is where you want to go to get the link to your survey, right? So in fact, my survey, this is the public link. Now, again, you don't see the other questions we just added because the form was not resubmitted for publication, right? This is the initial form that I submitted for publication, and that's why this is what's live right now. That's why the results that you saw are basically these 4 questions, right? So this is where you can get your survey link. You can copy the link and send it out to test users, to colleagues to test out your survey. Once your survey is your project is in production and it's live, this is what you would send out in a mass email or whatever it might be, how to distribute your survey, right? And then you can also have it send you the URL and email code, QR code in the email. It can give you a QR code. You can actually ask REDCap to give you a custom link, right? But there's a bit of a process with that. Next would be the add or edit records. So let's say you have a survey, right? You sent it out, you got data back, right? And then you realize there's duplicates or there's just something you don't want anymore, right? You can come here to add or edit records. And let's say record number 1, right? you can actually delete the record, or you could download a PDF of the record, right? So let's say I want to delete it, delete record. And now record number 1, as you saw, is deleted. So you can, if you're preparing a report, maybe for the dean or maybe for, your supervisor, and there's some, data that's not it's not complete, it's not productive, it's duplicate, or if it's just spam data, you can come here and can delete it so it doesn't affect your report. Again, a very useful tool that REDCap offers. The last thing I want to cover is, as you probably noticed, I went over just a select few things, right, that I think you should know for the next session that we have, where we build out a project ourselves. But there's a lot more to REDCap as well. And this is why REDCap gives you a help and FAQ link down here, which has, just general questions and even specific questions that I guess REDCap since 2004 was asked a lot. So they compiled all the most, frequent asked questions, and they put them here for you. Another tool that they give is video tutorials, and you can go here and basically view different tutorials for different things. So there's actually a detailed overview. Like today's session was very, high level, introduction. But if you want a more detailed overview, you can just come here and watch this.
2004.
And they basically go over in a lot more details, a lot more features, more information that you would maybe want to know for REDCap. And with that, January 18th of next year, is our next session where we build out our REDCap project. So during that session, we're going to work as a group. I know it might be a little bit challenging with over 50, 60 people, but we're going to try it. We're going to roll up our sleeves together, actually create a new project, and go through it one by one, make questions, customize it, and actually submit it for production. And then hopefully it gets approved after the session, obviously within like 24, 48 hours. Then you can have a link that you can send to your colleagues, or you can play around with yourself, and you have for yourself, your first REDCap project. Thank you very much. I hope this was an easy to follow, brief introduction of REDCap. I know for those who are more experienced, this wasn't as detailed, right, as maybe some of the tutorials available, but I really wanted this to be easy to digest, easy to understand session where you're trained. For those of you who don't have any experience with REDCap, you can feel comfortable next session to come and join us and build your own REDCap project. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Naveed. Thank you, Christopher. He just posted the registration link in the chat for our January 18th session. Does anyone have any questions for Naveed? You can either unmute yourself or type it in the chat. Okay, Naveed, there's one. It says, is there a character limit on short answer questions?
I would have to get back to you on the exact number, but I believe there is. But again, I never kind of maxed it out myself, right? So I don't know if there's a specific, like, is it like 500 characters, 1,000 characters, whatever it might be, right? That's something I will definitely note down. By the way, any question that I tell you that I'm gonna get back to you, I will write them down, and next session, I'll give you the exact precise answer. If that's, okay with everyone.
And then his second question was, is the response interface accessible?
The response interface accessible. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, sure. For someone who's blind and uses a screen reader, can that, I'm thinking first of all what the respondents would see who are filling out a survey. And so so I guess with accessibility, we think, is it accessible for someone who's blind who would be using a screen reader, and is use of a mouse required, or can someone use like the tab key to go through the different fields and respond to them?
Sure, that's a very good question. So I know from the top of my head, you could use a tab key to go, over the questions, but um, is it, did they custom make it to allow for accessibility? Again, that's something I'll look into and get back to the next session. But I know for sure you can hit the tab, go through it. But there should be more features. I'm sure this is something that they definitely have worked on, because I'm sure you're not the first person to ask this question, right?
Yeah, I would hope not.
Yeah. So that's something I can definitely get to specifics and definitely get back to you. The reason I'm saying this, I want to give you the exact, like exact specifics when I answer questions. And for that, I do want to go back to like the handbook and just make sure I get you the right information.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that attention to detail, and yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Michael.
Naveed, thank you very much. It's excellent, well done, nice session. And I'm kind of a hands-on type of person, so I'm wondering, is there anything untoward about me getting in and creating an account and creating a project for fun and similar to what you just did here, and trying it out and publishing a survey and giving it a go? And if I were to do that, that would be the part B of my question. If I were to do that, how long could I expect that demo project to persist before it might be wiped out by someone or automatically deleted? Would it stay up in perpetuity, or for some defined length of time? You might have an answer to that. Thank you.
Sure. So, by the way, the town is like doing construction literally right in front of my house. I apologize if you hear like some background noise. Hopefully the mic has sound cancellation technology, but it's very simple. You just contact the REDCap administrator. Michael, you're from UB, right? I'm assuming.
Well, yes, sir. I mean, I'm enrolled as a student. Yes.
Okay, great. So
I would assume that does it, right?
yeah, I would basically,
I'm
I can
a
drop the link.
part-time research associate also.
Okay, yeah, no, that's completely fine. What I'll do is I'll drop the email. Let me just stop sharing my screen. I'll drop the email in the chat. Just email them and ask for access, and just say that you can even reference today's session. Say that you attended, REDCap 101, and you just want to, utilize it and, make something for fun, for practice, to learn for sake of learning. I don't think there's going to be any, hesitations to give you access. And then second, your project is your project. No one can delete it. No one can, modify it. You can go in, build out everything you want. You can do exactly what I demonstrated and do more as well. And it's your project, and no one's going to delete it. No one has access to it except whoever you give access to it, right? So yeah, you can do everything hands-on if that's the best way of learning, which I try to agree with you. That is the best way to learn something. You can definitely do that. There should be no problem for you to enroll.
All right. And then Naveed, we have another question in the chat. Are elements of consent conducted in REDCap, or do you need to have a separate landing page elsewhere that provides that and then sends the user to RC post consent? Also, can RC send email reminders for repeated measures?
Okay, very good question. As for consent, I believe that if you are, and again, I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but when it comes to the specifics, I will get back to you on those, right? I can only speak from my experience and from my exposure with REDCap. Currently, I have not utilized REDCap in a way that I needed IRB approval, right? I believe that if you're going to use it to collect data that sensitive that you need consent or you need IRB approval, there probably is a process with REDCap that you have to go through. And I'm sure there is something built in, a feature built into REDCap that will allow you to get consent. In fact, I think somebody just commented that they do use it for consent. But again, the specific details, I will get back to you in the next session. I'll write your question down and get you the specifics.
Does anyone else have any other questions?
Marshall, it looks like I don't know if Naveed would have an answer to this right now, but there's a question. Could you talk a little about how to connect electronic gift cards to a large REDCap survey? Would it be the same as with other survey tools? For instance, the last question directs users to a separate survey where they enter their email.
Yeah, I mean, that's again another question where I need to because I'm only going to give you the answers I know from experience, and I would have to look that up. I'm assuming there definitely is a way. Again, REDCap has been around since 2004, and I'm sure others have had the same question or the same kind of use scenario. So that's something I will get back to you on the specifics. In fact, you might not even have to wait until the next session. I'll try to get you the answers, everyone who I said this to. And then Marshall and Alexis, they have your emails. I can probably just email you the answer directly. So you don't have to wait until next year to get an answer to your questions.
Any other questions going once? Okay, so if there are no other questions, I will be sending out a post survey that you can fill out, complete. And if you have any other questions or things you possibly want addressed in the second REDCap section, you can feel free to put that in the comment section of the survey that I'll send. I'll be sending that a little later this afternoon. So thank you all for attending. Hope you have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.